session about this, a number of projects that are going on for the 90 Mile Beach that would impact or may impact all the communities along the 90 Mile Beach. So the purpose of this information session is just so that everybody knows what's going on, and I guess try and figure out how the way that our group can get a little bit bigger, and all communities supporting each other against these projects. So we've got a slide. We've got a slideshow going. And we've got, I'll just do a bit of a brief introduction, and then there's about 3 speakers who can give you information on the different projects that are going on. The first slide, I know that you can't probably see it properly, but this is called the Noble Tom Crosser. It's a drill-up jack rig that's going to be in place off Golden Beach, probably about 6 to 8 kilometres off Golden Beach, and it's going to be there for a period of a couple of months to actually test the core bedrock of where they actually want to store carbon storage. So you'll get more information about the carbon storage a bit later on. So a bit of an introduction. Our group, it's sort of morphed into something a little bit different. We started out as a group in January 2018 last year because we heard of these plans for carbon storage, which means, I guess, to service the coal industry in the valley. The idea was to capture the emissions that normally go into the air, turn it into a liquid and pipe it down into the Golden Beach, into the bedrock under the water. So that's how we initially started. We were a really small group. Some of our members are full-time residents of Golden Beach, some are part-time residents, some are visitors, regular visitors to where we are. So when I said it's morphed, it was about carbon storage, but now there's actually gas storage. And there's a large seismic survey that's planned, which is about 14,000 square kilometres. So we're sort of trying to stand for a whole lot of things, but the basis is a standing and trying to protect the pristine environment. So Anita Pitch is going to talk about carbon storage. We've got Maggie from Sea Spray, who was very instrumental in talking about in the gas and the fracking that Sea Spray actually won. And Tracy is going to talk about the coal to hydrogen project and a little bit. Tracy's got a whole lot of knowledge in terms of what goes on in the valley and how that's going to impact us going all the way, like all the waste gets dumped down into the 90 Mile Beach, and at the other end it goes to Western Port to service Japan, right? So a bit about the seismic survey. NOPSEMA stands for National Offshore Petroleum Safety and Environmental Management Authority. Anything that happens out in the ocean needs to go through NOPSEMA, and we're finding NOPSEMA doesn't reject a whole lot of projects. Last November they did reject a 16,000 square kilometre seismic survey. They rejected on the basis that the fisheries and lakes entrants had concern about the impact on the sea life and the fact that they were essentially going to be asked to hold or pause the fishing until the seismic survey was over. So that was rejected, but not entirely. It meant that CGG Services, a French company that's doing the seismic survey, would have to reapply and address the concerns of the fishery community. So CGG has reapplied and it's been accepted. That's the area, so it goes all the way from Golden Beach through to Lakes Entrance, so it's a massive area. It's 14,000 square kilometre area, and it's so large they have to break it up into 5 sections, and each section is going to take 1 month to survey. The purpose of the survey is to find available wells, empty wells, half-empty wells, whatever, So I guess the goal would be encouraging new business to come in. So that's the purpose, further discovery and field development. You can't really see this as a seismic survey ship, and it's got lots of tentacles, something that hangs out the back, and it sends really loud boom noises down into the rock to find how deep it is, how thick it is, whether it can withstand anything that they're wanting to store in that rock bed. So I don't know if anyone experienced the seismic survey they had in February last year, in line with CarbonNet, which is wanting to do this carbon storage. They did a seismic survey, and it went for 2 weeks, and they told us that we wouldn't notice a thing. They told us if we were to go in the water, we shouldn't be going in from the waist up. But when the time came, they closed the beach, they stopped people going in the water. Dogs weren't allowed in the water. And the impact was quite great. People reported their pictures fell off the walls. People reported that there was damage to their houses, so new cracks started to form. Some people reported about feeling sick and dizziness, and a lot of dogs carried on like it was a thunderstorm. So CarbonNet have since then stated that they weren't aware that this was going to be the impact, which was interesting. So that's a little bit about what it looks like. There's the survey vessel, and they're sending all these acoustic streamers, is what it's called, sending all these sound waves down. There's, on our website, which is 90 Mile Against Carbon Storage, we've got some video, I guess, of, there's someone in the US, I can't remember his name, but to Congress he played an air horn to say that that's how loud it was for whales, fish, dolphins. And it sort of is interesting to think about, if there is no damage, why were we told not to go in the water, and why is the beach totally closed for a seismic survey? So depending what side the scientists sit on, the impacts remain unclear, but there is negative impacts on scallops, rock lobster and plankton. There is a stress response to the whales. Talked about the February 2018 effects, and then NOPSEMA initially rejected this future survey. So that's it about the seismic survey, which is going to impact everybody. So this is what we're needing to get out further. It's not just about Golden Beach. You guys are going to hear it. We'll be coming past. Lake's Entrance will hear it. Sea Spray will hear it. Everybody's going to hear it and be affected by it. Alright, so now I'm going to pass it on to Anita, who will do a bit more of the information about carbon storage.
I live in Paradise Beach, and I'm a member of the 90 Mile Against Carbon Storage Action Group. When I first heard about the proposal for carbon storage of 90 Mile Beach, I actually approached the topic with an open mind, and because I'm genuinely concerned about carbon pollution, about climate change. So I'm not even... Thank you. So I went on to a CarbonNet meeting, and at the meeting I became quite alarmed about the proposal involved that was being used to justify expanding coal power plants at a time when we really should be getting rid of them and investing in renewables. I was also appalled at the way in which CarbonNet conducted the information session. They seemed to me to be sort of smirking as they used these vaguely scientific terms and essentially said nothing. They also appeared unable to provide answers to specific questions that were asked, which really means one of two things. Either they don't know the answers, or they do know the answers, but they're not prepared to share them with us. And either way, I think that's bad news. So I'm looking specifically at one of the claims that was made at the information session, which was that there are 20 successful carbon storage plants already operating around the world. Now that sounds quite impressive and it sounds really positive. So I thought, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to do some research into this and see what these 20 projects are and whether they really are operating successfully around the world. And in short, what I found was that most of those projects actually aren't relevant to the project that's going to be conducted here. And the few that are have quite significant and substantial problems with them. So these 20 successful projects are not 20 successful projects at all. And I assume that CarbonNet didn't really expect us to check the facts. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And Tracy is actually going to give you more detail about the CarbonNet project and the ins and outs of it. So as I said, I'm specifically focusing on this area. So in a nutshell, the CarbonNet project is trying to establish a commercial scale carbon capture and storage network, bringing together, they're claiming, multiple carbon dioxide capture projects in Victoria's Latrobe Valley. The carbon dioxide is going to be transported via a shared pipeline and injected into deep offshore storage sites off Golden Beach on the 90 Mile Beach coastline. And to summarise, which as I said Tracy will discuss more, the danger is really threefold. There's a risk of catastrophe in the production of carbon dioxide from coal extraction and the production of liquid hydrogen. There's a risk in the transportation of the carbon dioxide in pipelines across Gippsland. And there's also long-term danger to the environment, to marine wildlife, and to residents from storage of this carbon under the sea along our coastline. So, as I said, CarbonNet are fond of claiming that there are 20 similar projects to the one they're proposing here operating globally. They claim that they're hugely successful, and as I'll show you now, that's a false claim, and they know it's a false claim. So one of the projects that CarbonNet like to use as an example of carbon storage technology that's already operating in Australia is the Gorgon project in Western Australia. And this project actually provides indisputable evidence that the process is not working and that the carbon capture and storage approach has failed. So the Gorgon injection project at Barrow Island in Western Australia is a gas processing plant that was intended to inject carbon dioxide waste into the saline aquifer beneath Barrow Island. Now that was an actual condition of the project's approval, that the carbon dioxide waste get injected. However, the technical problems, including things like leaky valves that could corrode, and excess water in the pipeline from the liquid nitrogen gas plant to the injection wells, have meant that although the gas plant is already operating, the carbon storage operations haven't even begun. So there's no successful operation, they haven't even begun. What this effectively means is that millions of tonnes of carbon dioxide are currently being released into the atmosphere. Now the amount of the emissions is equal to the combined greenhouse gas emissions saved by all of Australia's solar panels in a year. So it's currently unclear even whether Chevron is going to face any penalties for failing to comply with this, which is a key tenet of the granting of a licence to operate. So the project there has also attracted criticism from conservation groups in relation to the potential impact on Barrow Island's ecology. Barrow Island is a Class A nature reserve. It's home to a vulnerable species of black turtle and many other animals that aren't found on the Australian mainland. Now, it was reported in November 2011 that native animals on Barrow Island have been accidentally killed on a daily basis, with a known total of 1,550 since construction began. There are also concerns that quarantine procedures on Barrow Island are inadequate, and also about the risks associated with geological sequestration of carbon dioxide. And just as a sort of additional factor, the Gorgon project is backed by $60 million of federal government funding. So that is claimed as the most relevant example to the one that that's being proposed. Has never begun, it's not working. But I thought let's look further. CarbonNet also talk about a number of functioning carbon storage facilities operating around the world. Now this claim also doesn't bear close scrutiny. And And so of the 20 projects that they usually cite, 14, which I've listed on this site for anybody who's actually interested in what the projects are, use carbon capture and storage for enhanced oil recovery. Now, enhanced oil recovery is where carbon dioxide is injected into a depleted oil field to push the remaining oil to the surface. So the production of the extra oil partially covers the cost of the carbon storage. It occurs, obviously, if there's already been oil production there, at pre-existing sites that have a long history of prior usage. They've already been tested and monitored, at least to some extent, over a number of years. Now, also, these 14 plants are also based on land. So they really can't be claimed as a successful example of carbon storage under the ocean. So, in other words, 14 of the 20 that CarbonNet claim as being successfully operating and as being a precedent for our case are totally irrelevant to the proposed experiment that's going to happen off 90 Mile Beach. So they can just be taken out of the equation altogether. Okay, also out of the 20, at least 8 have been very heavily subsidised by massive government grants or tax breaks. So, for example, operations in Texas and Norway exist only because there are local tax and carbon laws that provide incentives for carbon storage for private companies. So without those grants and those tax breaks, they wouldn't be able to afford to operate. It's just not economically viable. Okay, in addition to that, 5 of the 20 have actually been shut down, scaled back or suspended as non-viable or not safe, or both. 4 of the 20 use direct injection into an adjacent area, and so they don't actually send carbon dioxide through hundreds of kilometres of vulnerable pipeline at all as proposed in the project here. They just simply inject it exactly next to the field that it came out of. Okay, 4 of the 20 have been subject to leakage problems. A further 2 plants have had unexpected and unexplained catastrophic incidents in which workers were killed or badly injured. Now, those were, in those cases, prior to the commencement of carbon storage, but it goes to show the record of those companies in dealing with the safety of workers and their laxity of their procedures. The fact that they can't explain what happened in those cases is kind of even more alarming. Now, the existing carbon capture and storage plants also don't have a very good record of actually storing carbon either. So in the case of Boundary Dam in Canada, it has been found that while 90% of carbon dioxide smokestack emissions are indeed captured, only a portion of that is actually stored, and due to breakdowns, the carbon storage unit is only operational 40% of the time. And just on top of that, the carbon storage at Boundary Dam actually doubles the price of electricity there. Okay, in the case of the Petronova project in Texas, which is one of the enhanced oil recovery projects that is really heavily subsidised by the US and Japanese governments, the total impact of the carbon capture system is actually an estimated 2% increase in carbon dioxide emissions when you factor in the gas-fired turbine that powers the system and the emissions from the additional petroleum products. 8 of the 20 projects that CarbonNet quote as success stories have actually been operating for less than 5 years, and almost all of them have been operating for less than 10 years. So there's really, when you look at the idea of a long-term solution that they're proposing that is supposed to last for millions of years, and the fact that many of these aren't actually operating successfully at all, I think that really brings up some real worry. So what I thought I would do before I sign off is to just take this data and actually do a sort of a little analysis of it in a kind of a more succinct way. So, if we remove the 14 projects that are enhanced oil recovery and on land and therefore irrelevant, we're left with 6 projects out of the 20 that CarbonNet's talked about. So I'll just look at those briefly. The Illinois Industrial CCS project is an ethanol production plant. It uses a pipeline to store carbon dioxide in a saline aquifer. It received a $141 million investment from the US Department of Energy, and commercial injection began in April 2017, so it's still very, very early days yet to see how that's operating and whether there are any problems. The Quest Alberta project captures steam from methane reformer units, produces hydrogen to upgrade bitumen, and then uses a pipeline to deposit carbon dioxide in a deep saline aquifer. It's been running since 2015, actually since November 2015. The governments of Alberta and Canada provided $745 million and $120 million Canadian dollars respectively for the project. Given the expense, Alberta's provisional government says it will honour the current funding commitments on the Quest project but has no plans to fund any future ones. And expert reports have noted that there will be extensive environmental impacts due to forest loss and due to demands for fresh water. The Insula project in Algeria is a gas processing plant that injects carbon dioxide into depleted gas reservoirs in the saline aquifer. It started operating in 2004, but carbon capture was suspended in 2011 as there had been concerns about leakage. And the future injection strategy is currently under review, so that's not operational. Now, the two projects in Norway, Sleipner and Snøhvit, are natural gas plants. Sleipner is actually located offshore, and the carbon dioxide is injected directly into the aquifer out there, so it doesn't run through pipelines, it doesn't run across land. So, in many respects, this project also is not strictly relevant to the one proposed here, because there are so many risks associated with the pipeline. Snøhvit began in 2008, and it does use a pipeline to store carbon dioxide in the saline aquifer. Now, both of those projects are massively subsidised by the Norwegian taxpayer. The projects are driven by Norway's huge taxes on carbon dioxide, which means that it is cheaper for the companies to install carbon capture technology than to pay the tax. Sleipner, which began operation in 1996, is considered the poster child of the carbon capture argument. It's generally claimed to have had 20 years of success. But even after those 20 years, it's still heavily subsidised. And a report by the Institute of Civil Engineers in the UK states that future governments will have to continue to subsidise the operation. They also state that the barriers to future projects include regulatory issues and a lack of commercial drivers. Now, the other thing that's been discovered with this project is that the mapping of the ocean structures was inaccurate. So all of that effort they do to map it was inaccurate. There have been leakages of non-carbon dioxide substances in some parts of the project. And the more recent Snøhvit project has also suffered from inaccurate mapping. In 2010 it was discovered that there was less capacity than they expected, so now they're drilling and fracturing around it to try and increase the capacity. And as we've already discussed, the disaster that's happening on Barrow Island. So basically, if you look at the table of the 6 remaining projects that are somewhat relevant, you can see the falsity of CarbonNet's claims that there are 20 successful carbon capture operations like the one proposed for Golden Beach. Of the 6 that have any relevance to the project at all, each of them can be eliminated on multiple grounds, including safety issues, or the inability to make the technology function at all, and the fact that they're not economically viable. So surely the money thrown into these projects by the government could be better spent on proven renewable technologies. Currently, there's also insufficient evidence that carbon storage under the ocean is either safe or economically viable. Greenpeace and the World Wildlife Fund have both publicly stated that there's strong reservations about the safety of geologic carbon storage. The Greenpeace website states, CCS is floundering. High costs and technical issues have led to a wave of high-profile project and program cancellations in recent years. More proof that this technology simply isn't ready for prime time. Now, the Union of Concerned Scientists also expresses concerns at the risk of both geologic and marine carbon storage, saying that they're largely untested and they carry huge and poorly understood threats to safety and the environment. So these include, and I'm talking off their own, quoting off this on their website, as direct risk to humans, the potential for environmental risks such as catastrophic venting of carbon dioxide, which is the rapid release of stored gas in toxic concentrations from underground site storages, the potential for contamination of the potable aquifer, the possible risk of induced earthquakes due to underground movement of displaced fluids, and the environmental risks include the yet unknown permanence of underground carbon storage, continued and possible increased reliance on fossil fuels with the associated adverse environmental consequences, particularly in ecologically sensitive areas, the adverse environmental impacts of pipeline facilities necessary for transferring the carbon dioxide to the aquifer, if implemented on a large scale, and unknown impacts on the biological communities that live in deep saline formations and other storage sites. So advocates for carbon storage believe that the use of coal as a fuel source can be offset by storing the carbon emissions generated. I think it's fairly obvious that a preferable and more sustainable strategy is to simply not produce the pollution in the first place, and then you don't actually have to worry about cleaning it up. So, just some concluding remarks. At a Carbon Net information session on August 1st, 2018, I asked the project director, Ian Philby, whether the Gippsland Basin would be monitored for leaks after injection of carbon dioxide, and also what was the contingency plan if a leak was discovered. Now, alarmingly, Mr. Philby answered that monitoring will not be constant, as this is too expensive. He said it may only take place once every 5 years. He also stated that the materials to repair leaks are currently in the experimental stage and are being tested at onshore geologic facilities. In other words, they're not being tested in the ocean. So we're going to have no way of knowing if the carbon dioxide is actually leaking. And even if we do find out it's leaking, to date, we don't have any proven technology that can fix it. So I basically ask you to support the United Rail Against Carbon Storage group in its call for a moratorium on carbon storage projects in Australia and an immediate support to the Carbon Net project, at least until the safety of people, flora and fauna in the surrounding areas can be guaranteed. Thank you everybody for your attention. These are just my voices, I'm kind of losing it at the moment.
Thank you, Anita. I think it was a bit shocking hearing all the money that's spent and we could be putting that into renewables. I was sitting back and I sort of want to tell everybody we are not a greenie group. Not that there's anything wrong with the greenie group, I think that that's fantastic. But we're all just here trying to protect our environment. So on my post the other day, someone called me a left-wing greenie, so I just wanted to make sure that that's not accurate. Before we invite Maggie, who is actually from Seaspray, to talk about the fracking that Seaspray did a fantastic community effort and got lots of communities together and actually got the fracking banned. We don't have any slides about the newest project is from GB Energy. It's a brand new private company that have located empty well 3 to 4 kilometres off Golden Beach, and the purpose of that is to store the oversupply and undersupply of gas for Longford. So it would involve installing 2 new pipes from Longford down into Golden Beach, offshore Golden Beach. One pipe, the gas would come out of the well to service when there's an undersupply in Longford, and then when there's an oversupply in Longford, they don't need the gas comes back and gets stored in the well. So GB Energy is a really new Australian company. They've done a number of community sessions. They've put a bit of money into the town to talk us into the fact that it's going to be a great thing. They can't guarantee, they've actually got no financial backing at the moment and are looking for financial backing. And they can't guarantee, I guess, no matter how much they say that the gas is servicing Victoria, it's not a guarantee that that's going to stay. So I guess in line with the seismic survey, the thought is that it will be open to the highest bidder, and government's not going to care whether that's Australia, whether that's Japan, whether it's anywhere else. So it's just something to keep in mind. But Maggie can talk a little bit more about her knowledge of gas stuff.
Hi, my name is Maggie Everson from Honeysuckle, Seaspray. My carer is supposed to be here today, so she's caught with the flu, and she probably did a better job than what I could. But yeah, we were all there from the beginning. And okay, it's about CSG, what we went through, and fracking, but it's more or less much the same. Because we're talking about conventional gas now, and I'm sure Tracy can tell you a lot more about the ins and outs of all of that. But yeah, it must have been about 5 years ago, we had our first meeting that we heard about this coal seam gas was actually in Sale at Neighbourhood House, and we'd never heard of it. We'd been living in the Honeysuckles for a while. We had our land for about 28 years, never heard a thing about it. And anyway, we went to that meeting, and then we found out that in Poowong they were actually having their declaration day, where they'd done a survey of all the community, and the majority of the community, about 98% or something, were against it and wanted more information and all the rest of it. Anyway, we went to that celebration day, and there was hundreds there from all over, because other communities were getting to hear about it all as well. So with the help of the Friends of the Earth and Tracy Anton as well, who's brilliant, I might say, we started having community meetings as well, and we did a survey in Seaspray, Honeysuckles and Stradbroke. They were the areas we were more or less covering. And 98% of our people said they didn't want gas fields, because we had lakes oil in Seaspray, and they actually fracked less than a kilometre from the school. And we were actually down there at one time when they were fracking, and the noise is horrific. Not to mention all the other problems with it. It was 300 metres from Merriman's Creek, which was the town's water supply. Even the farmers can't use, ponds that close to the creek. And the kids in the school were horrified. They thought that there was actually a jet landing in the schoolyard. They were that frightened. And anyway, we had meetings, we did surveys, and we just kept on with that. And then it was going through all the other communities across Gippsland, Burberry North, Alara, lots of areas. There's quite a few, I can't even remember the names, some of them. But through when everybody started getting a bit more information, because through Friends of the Earth, we found out a lot that was happening in Queensland, because in Queensland it had been going on for years. People didn't know much about it. And it takes a long time for any leaks to happen, which is it happens quite often up there. And people who even, one of the ladies in our community in Seaspray, her mother lived up there, and her little town in Queensland was literally shut down because it wasn't safe to live there. And she was the last one to stick it out before she actually passed away. And so it's very sad when it gets to that extent. But we had our declaration day, I think it was about 6 months after. We had community meetings. We got people from the environment to come down and speak at the meetings. And we had the legal people as well. Tracy, what do they call it? Defender's office, yes. And so we had different people who could come down and explain to everybody what exactly this was all about. And at that time, Ryan was our, Peter Ryan. And of course, they said, it was all Labour's fault. They gave the licenses out all those years ago and all the rest of it. They never did anything themselves to stop it or They thought it was just a great idea. Until we started going to the offices and sitting outside. We had knitting nannies and everything. We had demonstrations in the city. And then they lost government and the Andrews government got in. And that was the best thing that happened for us because we actually got, you mentioned before about being called Greens. We were called, I think it was latte suppers, greenies from somewhere down in the city or something. I've never been a greenie in my life, but I'm concerned about what was happening in Seasbury because it was just getting horrific. 3 of the ladies from our community actually went up to Queensland to have a look to see for themselves and were horrified when they drove around and saw, because it was literally, it was just miles and miles of tracks through farmland. And it was, you know, and they were just going 24 hours a day. And in Seasbury, even in the summer on a fireland day, they could still frack. And you've got this great big flame and everything that comes out. So, you know, there's so much more to it. And anyway, we ended up meetings upon meetings in the city. We were writing letters to all the members in town. And Daniel Andrews and everybody else. We had a knitting nannies in the city outside Parliament when we knew he was there, Daniel Andrews. And it was quite funny actually because we went in, myself and Julie, who's a farmer, and actually that was the most incredible thing too because it was amazing the amount of farmers that came on board who were normally very conservative and very hesitant at first, but when they found out, especially Flint. I mean, he was just amazing. I think at one time he had 27 politicians down at his farm and said, this is what we have to do before we can even sell our beef, you know, and all the rest of it. Anyway, because we had a couple of, actually Ryan set up the first inquiry team, and then that fell through. We didn't take it far enough. Andrew set up another one, and that went even further, which was good. But when we were in the city that day, knitting nannies, sitting there, knitting outside the office, hoping that Daniel Andrews would come out. Well, we missed him. I went around with Julie to have lunch, and we were standing at the counter, and we wouldn't believe we walked up to the counter to get lunch. It was Daniel Andrews. And I thought, oh, this is my opportunity. So I just sort of walked over to him and was outside, and I said, I just introduced who I was, and I said we were knitting nannies and we were sitting outside, and would he come around and have a chat with us, you know? And he said, oh, you just might, you know. Well, we were all gobsmacked when he did, and he did come around, and he was able to speak to some of the farmers too that were there, and from then on things started happening. And yeah, we finally got a green person who took it into Parliament, and then the ball started rolling. But of course, it wasn't just us in Seasbury and the honeysuckles in Stratford. It was all the other communities that all got together as well. And every time they started an alliance group, which was a meeting about, you know, once a month or every couple of months, and people from those communities would go along and just share their points of view on what was happening in their area. So by everybody sticking together made a heck of a difference. So by the time, that's okay, go for it. So, you know, by the time all these people were doing their surveys, I mean, it had really taken off. You know, and what we didn't learn about coal seam gas, I think it was Woodson. But yeah, that was about 4 or 5 years worth of work, I think. You know, so it's a matter of just sticking in there, keeping at it. And, you know, when you stick together, it really makes all the difference in the world. And I know what's happening here now at, you know, Golden Beach, it'll affect the whole coastline. You know, and it was the same with Thompson Lakes. So, you know, I mean, we can, you know, do our bit when we, you know, when necessary, because they are actually talking. There was an alliance meeting last week. We were away. And what they want to do is try to get, hands across the sands or something, like different communities taking, photographs of what the concerns are, and especially with this concern at the moment. So, I mean, us in Seaspare will certainly be doing that as well for you, Dave Miswell. And, I can't think of anything else that might be of interest to you. Stick together. It's the most important thing, and you can move mountains. Because we finally got it back.
Just a bit aware of time. Maggie does have a video, sort of montage of photos of all their protests and stuff if they were successful, but we might play it at the end if we've got a bit more time. And we might get Tracy to talk about all other things.
Hello, my name is Tracy Mann. I'm actually living in Toongabbie. Thank you. My specialty is Camelot when they put gas licence over our township, and so I've gone into investigative research basically on the policy setting, the regulatory setting, and I've become aligned with a lot of other groups, more so just to help them and assist them in how the government works, pitfalls, exposing what you aren't told. And that's one of the specialties that we need to be aware that's happening with this CarbonNet project. I've got a little pointer here. Can you see where this is here? So this little field here is the Golden Beach gas field. And that's the area. So that's classified as the near-shore area where they were doing all the major investigations for this carbon storage. This was the other big option here, and they eliminated that one because they deemed that to not have many, sort of protective seals. Now, the whole project for the carbon capture to go into this little field was supposed to be Yallourn Power Station, Loy Yang, and the dual gas project. Do people remember that one that fell over in 2012? So they were the three were going to become the multi-user pipeline, and they were going to provide the emissions. Now, so providing the emissions was based on purely job opportunities. So they were extending more networks for job opportunities. We were not taking CO2 out of the air and bringing down the worldwide or town. We were just continuing on, and that's when they were going to do a pipeline. It's at least 100 kilometres to 120 kilometres to this field here. Now, can you see this little arrow there? So there's a little arrow, that's called an anticline. So in the rock formation that is under the seabed, it's like a little dome effect. That is why they're saying that is chosen. Now, when this project first started, a lot of people talked about it was going to go into a depleted oil fields, all out here, and it's not. Never was going to go in there because it's too expensive for the pipeline to get out there. Can you see this as a 3D model? No, it's not. This is a very good model because what happens where these fields are, gas, and so the red is the gas and the green is the oil. The oil comes up as basically columns, and it stops the oil and gas, and it is trapped in there by cap rock. So this is a 3D model. Move this screen anyway to get that picture. I might show that on a laptop just afterwards because this is really significant on all that. So this is high up. You'll see it's different. That's 600 metres up from there to there, and it's 25 kilometres. So we know that some of the oil fields out there are about 40 k's.
I'll push that screen so people can see it. It might mean some people just need to move a little bit.
Thank you.
Right. So what these arrows mean is in 2013 there was a document that says it's a fill-to-spill chain, meaning that gas and oil were accumulating and somehow it would fill up and it would move on and on and on and on and on. Now the relevance of this is that Golden Beach doesn't seal the gas. Somehow this gas that they know, there's like a DNA, there's microbes, they do testing and they see that in the soils. They know that what water is in the shallow part, the gas and the oil are in the shallow part of the water and onshore. So I presented this to one of the major geophysicists, the geologist with Carbonet called Nick Hoffman, and this is by O'Brien. He knew the paper and he said that's now not relevant. Yet there is no contradicting document to say that this is not relevant, and he's actually passed judgment on this and gave comment supporting it. This is only in 2013. So we, as a community, when we go to these meetings, we're presented with Carbonet's documents. But on investigative research, there's a whole lot of other expert documents that still talk about, we know that gas goes somewhere else. Well, how does it get there? This is another slide that Ian Philby, being director of Carbonet, do not like me using, but it's relevant in the point that clearly shows this here, that area where Golden Beach Field is in a moderate seal area. So what they talk about, if they're going to inject the gas, it's got to have some trapping mechanism to make the plume stay there. So that area is deemed moderate. Now, recently they've done some more testing, and that was part of the seismic testing, and they believe that that's not the case anymore. But there's evidence, this is the word evidence, as opposed to modelling, that there are concentrations in the water and soil. This is a schematic chart that it's not the ones that Carbonet will use, but it basically shows you a bit of the formation. So here we have the seabed up here. This is the coastline. Right? Onshore, so you're around about here. This part here is what's called the Lakes Entrance Formation. That's the major cap rock that's going to trap the gas. So they're going to inject around this part, and the plume is going to go down that way. That's what they say. The plume is going to go down that way. Now, injection will cover a couple of years to decades. The dissolution, where they say the carbon dioxide will dissolve and become a mineral, goes over periods of thousands of years, and then geological time is millions of years to prove storage. So we're looking at in the short term for the injection of a couple of years to decades. So you see how there's a little gas column here? Somehow that Golden Beach field, that GB Energy want to extract gas in, it's empty, well it hasn't got much in it because it's leaking. That same field was started by Woodside in 1967, has 14 wells in it. Part of this data collection is to prove that those wells have integrity and that the CO2 will not leak up the wells. The these are the 14 wells. They are relying on competent and reliable data that what was submitted to the authorities 50 years ago, they can then make, you know, computations, numerical modelling, and know that it's not going to leak. So they know some of the wells that they need to make sure that plume stays away from. And so they're going to inject basically into this middle reservoir. Now a reservoir, well, if you went back to that 3D diagram, in that reservoir there is columns of gas and oil, but this is also the aquifer. And there'll be a picture of that later. So this is the caprock, and there's another part here that is what they call, it's a coal seam, and they believe that that's that other secondary seal. So you've got two major seals here, which is the caprock, a coal measure. So if they injected here, they wanted to flow the plume to flow down here, and then somehow they already know that it's going to sneak up into this reservoir, but the aquifer is going to push it that way. That's what they know. So, now, this is it. So this is your lakes entrance formation here. So that's their top seal. That's the shoreline there, and we're basically that's down that way is the coast. Right, is there many farmers here, or anybody knows of some of the local farmers who have seawater intrusion into their aquifers? So whereas they used to have fresh water, with the extraction going offshore, it's sucked in seawater into their aquifers now. So we know, this is what I do, this is one of my pet projects, is the aquifer depletion from offshore oil and gas. So we know already that there's not enough data collection, there's not enough monitoring, and then that's delivered by the government. It does not form any case studies anywhere in Australia because there is not enough monitoring points or data. Yet, they were able to determine that one of the appropriate seals here, this salinity wedge, is going to be the other reason to push the plume further away. So this is it. We have this shallow aquifer. A lot of people know that that doesn't even exist anymore because they're so run that dry. The only time there's water in there basically is when it rains. A lot of people are pulling from this little aquifer down here, and then that's the one there. So here it is. It's going to come about 1.8 Ks they're going to inject down here, and it's going to be around about 7 kilometres offshore, and that anticline dome, over time, it's going to dissolve, it's going to move, because CO2 migrates upward. It is very buoyant because it's lighter than water. And that's the thing that they need to know about the salinity. They need to know how dense the water is. So this is one of our major concerns, is that, I'll go to the next slide here. I'll go backwards for that one. That's that central dip. So what we know with, I might go back to the other one. Right, so what we know about all the studies that are coming out with CarbonNet, that it's all about the risk, and they can't 100% guarantee that there is no risk, because the regulatory standards said if anything's going to occur above a 10% probability of a risk, you have to prove 90% that you can cover that risk. So that's all they have to do, prove 90% that there will not be a problem. So we have a 10% risk. So when they talk about there is a low risk of something, sort of going into the shallow aquifer, It's because it's real. They're currently doing atmospheric and marine monitoring offshore. So has anybody seen those ones off the 90 Mile Beach? That's all the buoys that they've got out there. They're doing that monitoring to establish a baseline testing because it's real they can get up into that aquifer. Now if that gets up into that shallow aquifer, that shallow water, you've got problems then with the sea life there, and then that then merges onto the shoreline and then into those shallow aquifers onshore. And that's real. So it depends how they word it as low risk. Do they word it as a positive or do they word it as a negative? Now, when we go to our meetings, unless you do that extra research like Anita has done, you're not aware what goes on. Now, one of the classics I've got here is we've always been trying to get some information on the pipeline. So this pipeline that's going to occur, they don't like talking about it. No, because, you know, all that stuff.
It's been happening for years.
Yeah, the pipeline. And a lot of people do reference, oh look, this pipeline's been out there for ESO, you know, for years. There's nothing wrong with those. Well, CO2 in a compressed state is highly corrosive. So most pipelines are done as carbon steel, and with CO2, you can't have any water element to it because it will corrode, and that's as Anita said, which happened in the Gorgon project. It corrodes. So it was interesting, a couple of days ago, I found a 3-page summary by the Carbonet director, very fluffy, very, you know, sort of nondescript about the pipeline, just mentioning about the cost. Now, it's been a bit of a sore point that we've said you need multiple users to determine the viability of that pipeline. And they won't admit to that, but that's what they had to do, and that's in all of their documents. Now, we find out that one of our last meetings that the director and Philby told ABC that there will only be the coal to hydrogen project. So as it stands now, that doesn't even exist yet because the pilot program, if it does come to a head, it will not be, it won't be capturing carbon. It's up to if they take it to a commercial stage where they have to build it there. So they haven't even got a commercial business case existing in Latrobe Valley. So in the meantime, they've got to provide a business case by 2020 because that's when their funding runs out. But they've got nothing to capture yet. So in the pipeline, so what they do, they want to take shortcuts when it starts getting a bit problematic about how are they going to pay for this. They've now realised that they can't get all the contaminants out of the CO2. So then how do you build a pipeline where it's not going to impact and corrode? CO2 in its compressed state, if there is a leakage, which is a risk on any pipeline, and that's part of the risk assessment through the Australian Health and Safety Standards, they now deem that this particular pipeline, hydrogen sulphide, might be more of a risk than what the CO2 does. And the CO2 displaces air and it can be instant death if it's a mass release of compressed CO2. So the first 3 pages I've got here, and then I've got an expanded 13-page document of really what is going on with this Carbonet pipeline. And it's this thing that they don't want us to know about. So, as a community, when we go to a meeting, we want it to be transparent. We want to know what's going on. We want to know what the risks are, but we're denied that. So that's one of the reasons why our group actually exists, to expose things like this. We are pushing them to the edge to tell us actually what's going on. And every time we come up with something to basically highlight the truth, they change their story. We probably should start highlighting all the things that they've changed their story on. Now, as Maggie said about pushing for, with the Andrews government for an inquiry, that inquiry wasn't just about for gas. It talked about everything else. They have to talk about existing, what's there, what do we know what's wrong, what are the problems, how we acknowledge what's gone on, years worth of gas extraction, and how is this then going to impact on that? So the GB Energy that's into the same field that's GB Energy, that's this one, that's going to go into that same field. They'll be putting down drills a little bit higher. Now, in one of the meetings, and this is hearsay because I wasn't there at that meeting, but their director said it's not ideal having somebody else in the same field drilling. Not ideal. Of course it's not ideal. So, here you have, so when you drill, now you need to understand that I'm in contact with some major drilling engineers, chemical engineers, all the drill site managers. When you drill to extract, you're depressurising that formation. So we understand like you're sucking it out. And then if you're going to then take that out and then you're going to put storage in, you're repressurising. And you have to do it at a controlled pace. So you have to know that you don't over-pressurise to then cause, fault reactivation, because that's where the gas is trapped, in fault lines. So that's happening above. In this formation below, they're injecting CO2. That drilling engineer doesn't know what that drilling engineer is doing. And in the meantime, you've got 14 wells that we're relying on that data being competent.
And they don't go together, do they?
So at the moment, we have there's something going on with government, because you can't have two projects together, working together like that. In theory, they can if you had the optimum and people know what's going on. They could do one and the other, but we already know they're doing their numerical computations on something that is not quite factual. One of the documents I've been waiting to come out and become public is from the National Centre for Groundwater Management, and it was a 2017 workshop, and this is with other countries. And they've determined that you can't model. Modelling now of groundwater is unreliable. So what we know about this is that they've determined that dense saline wedge is going to stay there and move a little bit onshore in the next 50 years. But now the documents say that modelling cannot determine that with, you don't know about the rainfalls, they're depending on, there's been changes in the extraction because something like 120 gigalitres get taken out with the coal and the offshore. So they've put all these modelling data in and it's totally incorrect. And this is the whole thing that to say that you can't actually determine that is going to give you an accurate description of how that we know that that's going to stay underground where it should be. And that's our whole point. It's 90% probability, that's all the government need to know. There's a 10% chance of a risk. Everywhere along, they've told us there's a risk, but somehow they want us to trust them. We want us to trust them that this is going to work. And in the meantime, they've got a whole pipeline coming that they don't even know what the hell to do. They don't know how to design it because they need to have the existing facilities capturing and knowing what those contaminants are, being hydrogen sulfides, the whole list of them. It's all in there, all those contaminants. So then, if that's then pumped down and injected, some of those contaminants are not compressible, so then they lose the capacity in that field. Now I've only put up some basic slides. I have a whole heap of other slides and other documents. I don't rely on Carbonet's documents, and I'm not saying that the geologist, the geophysicist is wrong because he's been in this field for 30 years. That's his job, and that's how he reads seismic studies. But my job is to find the counter-arguments, and it's their job to prove that that's wrong, and they've not been able to do that. That's what Anita did. They gave her all their data. She proved that what they said is wrong. So we're not getting the full story. We're not getting the full story at all, and they're not telling us the risk. So this one here, so you now have ESO's just been approved offshore. This is out in the Central Deep. Now what happens if we went back to the 3D image? It's a rift valley that goes down like that. At the top are the fault lines. Out here, they're fault lines. Okay, so the problem is out here, the deeper you have to drill, the more dangerous it is and the more risk there is. We're going into the continental shelf here. On the continental shelf, there's a document out there that if there is a landslip or an earthquake, there's a potential for a tsunami. So this is really, really problematic, and I'm furious with NOPSEMA for allowing that. This is how desperate they're getting, and how the government's just going, just go for anything. And they're just treating this Bass Strait, this whole area, that it's not known the problems that there is from conventional gas extraction, gas and oil. It's deliberate. The government, there's heaps of documents out there. So that whole area there, if that continental shelf has on the south side, if it has a landslip, tsunami hits Lakes Entrance and Portland. I'm not making this up.
It's about that far above sea level.
Yeah, I'm not making this up, it's in a document. If the landslip hits on the northern side of the continental shelf, it hits Tasmania. So we should not be drilling out in the Central Deep.
Is that for that big, the new, it's going to be steep as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's that deep as well. So they're fault lines. So if you reactivate that on the continental shelf, you're in trouble.
Compromise everything.
Compromise the whole lot.
Much well will go like that.
Yeah, everything. So everything in here, a tsunami can then, it can impact all that other, because some of those rigs that have gone overseas have been from tsunamis. It just breaks the whole pipework. Because you've got no warning. If you're going to have a cyclone off on Barrow Island and all that, they shut down all they shut it down at the seabed, and everybody's offline. That whole lot, which is one of the most populated areas for infrastructure, would just cop the whole lot.
So even with lock sport, because we're not right on the surf beach where
There's protected areas on that, so the tsunami would hit the Lakes Entrance area and the Portland area. There's the way that the breakage is of.
so it's one of those,
Yeah.
would it affect here, or you would come in?
You would have a degree of, but nothing like what, yeah.
Not as much as say Golden Beach or
No.
because they're right on the
Yeah. So that's the whole thing. So it's just basically on the landslip on that continental shelf. So that drilling is all about risk. And it's the expertise. And we know that there's, the expertise is there, but the risk is there too. And that's...
Which oil leaks affected? I mean, there was an earthquake in the infrastructure.
Oh yeah, so that would be your secondary impact, is from all this infrastructure in there, and the whole of the 90 Mile Beach would cop it.
So that's the honeysuckles underwater then, isn't it?
Yeah. So we have GB Energy is in the same field as they want to inject with the CO2. It just makes no sense. And then you have all this seismic testing going on there just to see, is there any dregs, is there any other wells that we haven't seen, let's just go for it. And then you have ESO now going out there because they're desperate. And apparently if they find stuff, then they're going to store it in the field above where they're going to inject CO2 below. So that's a very, very high pressurised formation, 4 kilometres from the shoreline. And the only reason that it's there is because because the seals and the better areas is out in the central deep, but it's too expensive and it will impact on infrastructure, production infrastructure. So that area is the next best. Yes, Maggie?
Why is it always this lovely part of the coast? That's what we can.
Okay, so I often hear that, like, why can't they do it somewhere else? Well, that Gippsland Basin is a sedimentary basin that contains the hydrocarbons. So that's why it is. Because that's an aquifer, it's because it's got permeability and porosity, meaning the oil and gas is in there and can stay there. So, yeah, you can't just say put it somewhere else because you don't have that same formation.
Would it also be a bit facetious to say that they can say, oh, we've done it before, it's been there for years, don't worry about it?
That's what they are saying. They said because the oil and gas has been contained over a millennia and created, you're just doing the reverse effect. But the oil and gas started from a cooking kitchen down in a seep in the bedrock, and it's come up and it's formed and it's trapped. It's different to going into a formation now that has got all these other wells and other considerations. It's totally different. So, and especially being so close to shore, because this is the one that just shows you. See, this is deeper down. See, higher integrity. But no, they're going to do it in this area. It's cheaper, it's closer, there's apparently appropriate little dome. They've proven that there's some seals, but you can't, the computations on that is no longer relevant. And this is one that I will be sending off to them and going, and as well as the pipeline going, you've got to explain this, you've got to do a better job. Because that's what they're not doing. We're going to these meetings, these consultations, and they're leaving it up to the geophysical side of it for the rig that's going to go out there, for any other testing that and using it then. But we're not questioning the system. We're not questioning how this is able to work. I can see it down here.
So maybe we might keep the questions just to the end. I'm just conscious of time for everyone.
So now we're going to conduct a question and answer if anybody's got any things that they'd like to ask.
If anyone's unsure of terminology, please ask, because there's a lot of terminology in all of that. So if anybody wants, ask away.
Or if anybody wants to see any other diagrams.
I'd like to see that 3D one that